So what are we covering in today's video? Well, this is going to be part 1 of 2, and in today's video we are going to be running through Keyscapes, the CFX Garreton, Addictive Keys, Piano Tech 8, specifically with the Shigeru Kawai SKE-X, and the new Claire plugin from Native Instruments. So please stick around, let's get started right away. Please do not infer any ranking from how I've put this in order. Literally, this was just kind of randomly brought into Logic, and this is the order we're going to be covering it in. So let's get started first with Keyscape. So here we are on the Keyscapes interface, and one of the things I love about Keyscape is how easy it is to navigate around this plugin. Top left corner, you've got all of your instrument categories right here. Starting with acoustic pianos, bell tone keyboards, clavs, e-pianos, and then getting into some slightly more esoteric stuff, but all really cool to investigate. Keyscapes, first of all, if you were looking for a single plugin to take care of all of your virtual keyboard needs, whether it's acoustic or e-piano or whatever, this has got to be on your list. I mean, yes, you've got your built-in stuff if you're using Logic or Ableton, but as we know, that's going to kind of just cut it in terms of a professional sound. If you really want something that's going to get up into that really nice, lush, professional kind of dimension of things where you can legitimately use this for projects, well, you need something like any of these plugins that we just talked about. Keyscapes covers virtually all of your bases on one stop. When it comes to purely acoustic, because one of the things that you're going to notice with a lot of these VSTs is that some of them are trying to provide variety. Others are really hyper-focused on even just one acoustic piano emulation. So with Keyscape, when it comes to the acoustic, the variety is a little bit limited, but the quality is very high. Essentially what we've got here is 2 acoustic pianos, Yamaha C7, and then what could be, easily something like like a Heinzmann 54-inch classic upright. I don't know for sure what the brand is. This could be a Bechstein. It could be an old, Steinway K52. Who knows? Anyway, one of those century-old uprights. And then what they've done is recorded and preset a bunch of those. And with the Yamaha, you've got the felt version of that versus the normal version of that. And then with this one, you've got the wing upright with and without tacks in the hammers. And boy, does that tack really change the tone, as you could imagine. So now let's listen to some of these instruments and just give you a sense of the sort of depth and the quality that you could expect out of this. So let's just start with the default Yamaha Custom C7 grand piano setting. Now I already know, because I know the plugin pretty well, I'm going to turn that pedal noise down a little bit because it is somewhat exaggerated over what I would usually prefer. And it's got a nice subtle tape saturation or tape compression going on there. It definitely doesn't necessarily give you the sense that you're in front of a real piano, but it's giving you the sound of, a pretty finished studio experience. So let's have a listen. So it's a really nice, close, intimate sound for sure on this one. Would be absolutely gorgeous for some jazz recording. I mean, you could already sort of feel is drifting into like Bill Evans territory, just that tone and that sound. And you've got some great ways to be able to tweak that as well. From the compressor to the tape, easy on-off controls. really not at all an overwhelming experience to go and start playing with this. So very easy to access, very easy to play around with. For 90%, something in that range, 90% of projects where you might need an acoustic piano tone, and particularly if you really enjoy that C7 sound, and it's not like there's a lot there. Hey, this could be a great option. I'm also going to touch on the wing upright. I think this is probably one of the most non-cartoonish, still really authentic recordings of a vintage upright in a way that's just trying to capture that character, not sort of over accentuate it. This is just great. It's fun to play, and there's definitely a time and place where you're going to want this sound in your projects. Boy, does that ever take you to a place. One of the strengths of Keyscapes is the versatility. So let's take a listen to some of these other instrument categories. So we've got bell tone keyboard. And for people who can't see my hands, I've got a little controller that's actually just below sight line. So that's how I'm triggering that right now. I can tell you 100% that that gets your head in the studio right away. And then another thing they do is they actually sort of pair some of these up. And I would say the Keyscape was sort of ahead of its time when they started doing this and matching up some of this stuff. Because as you're going to see from some of the other VSTs we get to a little later in the video, this idea of heavily affected pianos as a sound source rather than as the end point has really become trendy. Anyway, so to wrap Keyscapes up, my takeaways for sure are very easy to navigate, is giving you the type of modulation and editability that you need. It's not the most extreme out there, but it's great. And I would say if there was kind of a philosophy behind this plugin, it seems to be that they are going for really close, intimate detail, less concerned about some of those other recording practices like super extreme overhead miking or like super far away miking, anything like that. They're really trying to get the up close and personal portraits of all of these instruments that they are capturing, and you really do get that. We're going to move on now to CFX Garitin, from a plugin that does a whole bunch of things to a plugin that does kind of one thing, which is take a Yamaha CFX grand piano, stick it in the Abbey Road studio, and record it with a number of different microphones, mic configurations, and give you the option to manipulate it. So the main window here is also pretty well laid out. You've essentially got two sets of mics, closed miking and ambient miking, that you can mix back and forth here. And you've got your set of samples that you can choose from. Now, there are three sample sets: classic, contemporary, and player. And these are all basically mic placement and a difference of the use of what microphones. I really like the player. Well, actually, all three of these are great. I've used all three of these in different settings, but let's just go with the classic default. As a side note, I should mention that if you were going to be playing with any of these massive sample libraries, please do yourself a favor and make sure that you're dealing with an SSD. I know that's becoming pretty standard fare in 2025. If you are still using any sort of a kind of a rotating hard disk, y- get onto SSD as quickly as possible. You're gonna save a whole bunch of time waiting for those samples to load up. All right, so we've got the Garreton here on the default sound, kind of an even mix of close and ambient. Let's just bring that ambient down a little bit. Definitely, we don't need any of the reverb on, although they do have a built-in convolution reverb, as well as kind of a channel strip EQ approach. We're not going to turn those on, so this is kind of as raw as you are going to probably want it. So beyond just the sense of space that you got around, I should mention that on this plugin compared to say Keyscape, you are dealing with a much bigger sample set in terms of just sheer gigage. And I don't know if it's just me, but the sense of subtlety that you have and the dynamic and the responsiveness of the instrument. So that's great. For people looking to in a relatively affordable package, because the Garitin is not that much, it's a couple $100 USD. Basically, if you just need a great solid concert grand sound, you want to be able to play with it and manipulate it, but you don't need the absolute most insane version of it. I think this gets you to like the 97, 98% mark. I'd love it if they'd done this with like 2 or 3 other acoustic pianos, so we had, a little bit of tonal variety, but the CFX is great piano, and the capture is just great. So what are we liking here? Well, it's a really great combination of editability and control. It's not quite as crazy as what you get into the VSO, where you have like sometimes 5, 6, 8 microphone clusters to play around with. So it doesn't give you that sense that you literally are in the studio with that level of manipulation. But I like, it's still great to be able to play with the close and ambient miking. The ambient mic capture is terrific. So you don't have to get into playing with digital reverb. The digital reverb they've got in here is definitely usable, but I mean, anytime you can actually get away from simulating and just get the real thing, I don't know. It's just, I think your ear can hear it. I also like that you can very, very quickly flip the stereo image depending on whether you want the audience's perspective or the player's perspective. Because remember, when you're looking at a grand piano, the bass is coming out of the right and the treble's out of the left. When you're sitting at a grand piano playing it, it is the opposite. So you can flip it. And definitely if you're performing and you really, or if you're recording and you really want to make sure that it is sounding kind of as authentic as possible, you want the player's perspective. And then when you actually bounce out, you likely want to flip that again. Next, we're going to move on to Addictive Keys. Now, Addictive Keys has been a lot of people's list for many years for one big reason. It is super affordable, and what you get for that price is pretty remarkable. And in Addictive Keys, you're going to it's going to come with a grand piano, an upright piano, a Mark I, and an electric. So we can think of this as maybe being Keyscape, the baby version of Keyscape. Now, the interface, although it's very pretty, does take a little bit of getting used to because you're sort of flipping back between a number of these screens, and each one of the each one of the screens has a slightly different sort of user interface. that takes you a moment to kind of wrap your head around. So in this case, we're looking at the Studio Grand, and you've got all of these presets down here. But of course, you can also go up here and pull all of the presets just like you can with Addictive Drums. So there's a few different ways to get to where you want to go. And some of these screens are designed to get more exaggerated sounds, whereas other ones are designed to really give you a super pure one. So this, for example, I think this is, studio as recorded or something like that, should be giving us a pretty true tone. Let's have a listen. So we've really got a nice clean tone there. And certainly, the layers that are there are well captured. That's one called Studio Sound, Close Mix, Audience, and then you get into some of the wildly affected stuff. Now let's have a quick listen to the upright. Oh, that's nice. So there you go. With Addictive Keys, a little bit of getting used to in terms of the interface. But as I said, let's think of this as kind of junior Keyscapes. Now we're going to hop down into Piano Tech. Now, Piano Tech is different than any of the other plugins here in that it is true modeling. The sound is being generated in real time based on an algorithm. So there's no pre-recorded sample that it's drawing from. It really just is producing this almost like the visual equivalent of walking around a 3D world where you've got a graphics card and a graphics engine rendering an environment in real time, depending on how you interact with it. It's kind of what we're talking about here with Piano Tech. So we've got Piano Tech 8, which is the latest version. And one of the reasons I was really interested to put this on the list for today's video was that truly one of the great 9-foots that money could buy these days is a Shigeru Kawai SKE-X. So I've always been a little bit surprised and definitely disappointed that you could not access Shigeru Kawai sound in any of these major plugins. Now, I would love to see an SKE-X make it into a sample library, really would. So hope somebody's working on that. But until that happens, Piano Tech has modeled the SKE-X, and we have got it here. So we're going to play around with this, and we're going to pick the SKE-X Ryu. I would imagine most users of this plugin and this module for the plugin may not know what the Ryu refers to, but Ryu is the place where the Shigeru Kawai factory is and where their main research center is. So I don't know whether this was kind of Kawai's personal, Kawai's a company's personal favorite that they wanted to make sure got included in here, but I'm curious. Let's have a listen. Very cool. Let's take a listen to another one. Let's SKE-X classical recording. What do we think that one's all about? Well, two things they definitely got right about the Shigeru. One is it's got a very distinct kind of ambient wrap around the upper third of the instrument. And the other thing is just this gloomy warmth in the mid and lower midsection of that piano. And I think they've actually managed to replicate that pretty well. The other one that I've always really been impressed with on here was the New York Steinway D. That was always a great sound. Let's have a quick listen to it. So digging into this plugin just a little bit, this has probably got the most microcontrol over the entire experience and any of the plugins we're going to be talking about today. And we can do that in this plugin because it's being digitally generated. So literally every aspect you can manipulate. And when you get the pro version, and I think there's even one version beyond the pro version, you can get in and start to manipulate all of these aspects on a per note basis. Now, I struggle to think of a situation for myself where I would actually need that level of detail. But I could see it happening, and obviously the demand is there. They've come out with the option. So you've got everything from the hammer noise, the strike point, soft pedal. This is a crazy level of detail over the overtones. You've got the first 8 harmonics basically you can play with, as well as the hammer voicing. What it's doing when you're playing softly, medium, and loud. That really is a science unto itself, hammer voicing. And then you've got total control over the tuning system, tuning style, the soundboard. It really is remarkable. And that's before you even get into the miking engine. So for people who go with piano tech, there is definitely a bit of a geeking out factor here to get piano tech, because you kind of just want to start playing around with all these settings and really it's a great way actually to even teach you about piano tone in terms of delivering a nice usable sound for an end product. Piano tech is a very clean sound. It's definitely a full sound. There's a ton of detail going on in there, and you can unperfect it as well. There's ways to make it a little less shiny and a little less perfect than it already is out of the box. Things we like about this, just the sheer amount of detail that you can really muck with. And for me, because I just love pianos as an instrument, as an institution, I love the fact that this is a way for you to kind of teach yourself about instruments while also being able to play and record some really, really great sounds. Now, the last one we're going to cover in this video is called Claire. Now, Claire is actually the Native Instruments plugin where they have captured the Fazioli F308. So this is the extra long version with the 4th pedal. So this is Native Instruments attempt to kind of deliver on that in a pretty affordable package. For people who don't know Native Instruments, their contact player or their full contact is kind of their delivery vehicle for all of these virtual instruments. And Native Instruments just on their own has probably a dozen different piano emulators or piano VST plugins. I've tested virtually all of them. So Claire was interesting to me because, the Fazioli is a piano that has become more known in the recording industry. And I was curious to just see how authentic it was going to be for a pretty affordable price. That's one of the big advantages of the Native Instrument stuff. And the interface is pretty easy to navigate, pretty straightforward. You essentially have your main window with a couple of very basic controls, similar to, say, the Garreton CFX, where you've got a blend of the close and far miking, and you can have those, be on or off. So this is kind of the mic blend. Then you've got, reverb, which we're probably not going to turn on because we've got some of the far miking on. No delay, and right down the middle in terms of color and effect. You also have some control over some of the other aspects of the piano, resonance engine. Are you going to use the fourth pedal or not? Level of overtones. It's a Fazioli, so naturally there's already quite a few overtones coming off of this one. And then you got some special effects if you want those on as well. And a particle generator, which is actually something that's a lot more focused on with the Claire Avant thing. So we're not going to go in that direction yet, because we are just going to go with a nice basic setting, and let's see how this is. So definitely we'd want to get in there and tweak, the pedal noise is a little bit up in compared to the amount of sound output we're getting. So if we turn that dynamic up a little bit, and let's take it just a bit closer. That's kind of interesting how they've got that visual working there. And then what does this give us? Very interesting that sample that whole time is sort of pulling me back into like a piano or a pianissimo mode the whole time. So definitely we'd want to get in there and tweak the response curve a little bit is something to play around with, but it certainly captured that Fazioli tendency of hearing the higher harmonics in a greater proportion to the fundamental tone. Now we've got some of the particle generation going on. Dark shadow. Dampen sequence. So what are we liking about Claire? Well, for people who are looking for a pretty inexpensive way to add that Fazioli tone, if it's something that you've got an ear for and you really think that the project calls for it, well, this is probably one of the most affordable ways to access a pretty solid sample set of the F208. There's a lot of fun controls here and a lot of great presets to work through and play around with. And the interface, once you get in here, I guess just because of the fact it sort of sits within the contact player, it's always really compact. It's always really, really easy to navigate and parse through. Thank you so much for checking out our part 1 of the best piano VSTs of 2025. We're going to be back in a couple of weeks with another set of 5 for you to check out. We really appreciate you stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed listening to these, learned a little bit. My name is Stu Harrison. Please consider subscribing, and we hope to see you back soon.